Okay, we are back in the studio, back in the studio. There are people here. There are people right outside. It is so nice to be back, y'all. I went on a little break. I was on the East Coast. I saw all of the betches. I love the East Coast. I love the cold. That being said, I am so excited to not be there anymore because fuck that in terms of living. We are back in Los Angeles and we have some exciting things coming up in the woodwork. So congratulations to all of y'all truthies, not to be confused with truthers. We are at over 1,000 plays. So thank you so much to everyone who pressed play for 60 seconds and then stopped and said shut the fuck up, because that counts towards our numbers. Spotify Wrapped really flopped this year, and my suspicion is it has something to do with firing half of the labor force. Am I right? Am I right? Am I right? At the end of the day, AI cannot do what human beings can do, except for they sort of can, because it still happened. It just was whack, because there's no way that I listened to Katy Perry that many times. Also, I think Katy Perry specifically probably just did something where she paid out Spotify to put her name on the charts, because Wise Woman's World in my top songs of 2024. Lifetimes I understand. Moving on. For this episode, I wanted to talk about a few things before we get into the second half of the interview with Esteban. We get deeper, y'all. I edged you guys a little bit. Why did I say that? It is true, though. I told you that we were going to get into conflict. We were getting into the saucy, but just like Wicked, I saved the real action for the second half, except for that's not true for Wicked. Second half of Wicked is going to be shit, y'all. But hopefully John Chu's got some Asian excellence up his sleeve. Yeah. I reached out to some of y'all truthies on the interwebs about love and about relationships. And this morning, I put something out about non-monogamy and open relationships, because this is something that I have, thought about. Considered is a strong word, but in my journey, in my relationship with Esteban, hey cutie, we've talked about conceptually and realistically. Nope, my brain is not wired that way, and I'm okay with that. Work. Props to you. And on. I've seen exactly one open partnership work, but I've seen dozens attempt. I think that most people try non-monogamy as a Hail Mary to save a relationship, and that does not work. Additionally, agreed there. Additionally, I think that there are people who are truly non-monogamous, and they're very open and honest about that at the start of the relationship, but then the other party agrees to it despite reservations or a genuine yet misplaced belief they'll be able to handle it. I think it's like sexuality. It can't be a switch you turn on. You're either built for it or you're not. And I think the vast majority of people are not. That's interesting that we're getting more into the kind of nature versus nurture exploration of it all. There is some level of, oh my God, I need to breathe. I had coffee today and I had a relatively tougher day, mostly self-inflicted. So I need to ground myself. Grounding. Deep breath in. You can do it with me if you want. Hold, 2, 3, or 4. This is what we do on the suicide hotline if they're emotional and they need to get to rest in and out. 2, 3, 4. We're back. Maybe there is something to be said about just you're someone who can do it and someone who can't. And maybe something that has to do with whether or not you're able to isolate sex from attachment. Me personally, I'm not that guy. I'm not that girl. I think so. You have to be really good communicators and really vulnerable. It's also a constant stream of check-in, communication, and care. If the reason is not rooted with care for your partner, with partner in mind, it fails. All right, I'll take that. Be honest with yourself and really investigate why you're seeking an open/non-monogamous relationship. True, love it. All right, someone who is currently in a non-monogamous What? Non-monogamous relationship. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about open relationships. First of all, there's so many different types and so many different variations of rules. True. Unless you're completely, utterly, openly, and poly, etc., relatively rare, perhaps, you could certainly cheat, fuck up, betray, etc., all that stuff. It's just that you have different rules you go by, and it might not just be fucking someone else, which is like the hetero, wait, what? I can't read, which is the like traditional heteronormative way of cheating, haha. Also, it can change and vary not only from relation to relation, but from time period to time period. IG, start monogamous, open in a limited way, open it a bit more, close back up, etc. You just have to be clear about your needs and wants, if it fits with theirs, etc. I agree with that because I think some people are kind of like, that's really messy, that's too much. Could be, but I think that if you're in a very committed relationship with someone, you're able to kind of change the rules up as long as you're on the same page. But if you be breaking the rules, being very aware and naming that as cheating, I think that's important. So yeah, I'm a big it depends person, but I think these kinds of relationships should be talked about more. Oh, well, lucky you, because we're talking, we're yapping. Ugh. One of the biggest pros is I think it can often decrease pressure that a lot of monogamous relationships have with regard to sexual needs, physical intimacy. Like maybe if guys were allowed to fuck more girls, but maybe with limitations, not allowed to date, etc., they'd cheat less on their committed relationships with girlfriends/wives. Okay, this truthie is in the gay community / queer community, but I thought it was really interesting that they kind of spoke to that specifically from the straight perspective, because I think that I agree. Given that cheating is very rampant, this is making me think about like legalizing weed. I don't know that this is going to track at all, but it's kind of like we know it's going to happen. People are going to be smoking weed. People are going to be cheating. We have kind of some moral fences that are established. They're established. Take a breath. They're established, but perhaps if we were able to kind of break them down a little bit, open up that fence a little bit, perhaps that would give rise to actually healthier dynamics in relationships, so long that there is communication involved. But one overall way that I think I'm changing in my stance on this is that before I was much more guarded and much more rigid in my idea of your sexual needs should be 100% matched by your lifelong partner. And if there's something not compatible there, then they're just not the one for you. Now I think a little bit differently. I would like to think that my mind has opened a little bit more, because I think it actually takes a little bit of pressure off of the partner that you are with, assuming you're in a relationship. It takes some of the pressure off of them, because no matter what, they're not going to be able to embody every physical body type. If we're talking just purely in the physical, they're not able to be everything. And so it's normal to kind of want to wonder, kind of want to explore, whether that's in fantasy or in reality. I think the vast majority of people in these types of relationships just desperately fear commitment and are using terms like poly and E&M to not deal with that and use it as a justification for treating their partners poorly. Okay, so we're going more in the direction of breaching the trust, breaking the trust. That's probably where polyamory or openness can just kind of be some kind of scapegoat, a band-aid to the wound, a band-aid when the wound might need to be tourniqueted. Roommate sent in a voice message, and it's a little long. And you know what? That's good. Okay, here we go.
Hi, Eric.
Okay. Hi.
So my partner and I have been together for 8.5 years, and I feel like there's a bunch of different things that have played into us having like a really long-term happy relationship. We've never taken a break, and we've only been monogamous, so I can't really speak to like the full kind of range of how relationships can work.
As you shouldn't, bestie.
And I feel like obviously this is kind of obvious, but all relationships are different, right? All people are different. But I do feel like these things have really helped us kind of stand the test of time. The first one is flexibility. So I feel like a mindset that I've always had about this relationship is that if things need to change for whatever reason, then we'll let them change. So I'm never holding on too tightly to the relationship.
Oh,
And
whoa.
like, because that's like the moment where you're kind of like desperate for it to work is the moment that it'll stop working. So like, what do I mean by that? What-
Okay, not to cut you off, bestie, but I feel like I understand what you mean by that because I feel like that applies to a lot of things. The moment that you're desperate to get the job that you interviewed for, the moment that you're desperate to not disappoint a friend who you know are kind of in disagreeing with, like, desperation is something that should not be a part of a relationship. Desperation can be for situationships and for toxic other hullabaloo dynamics, but not a secure relationship.
like people change, right?
Yeah, right.
And we have changed in this relationship since we first started dating. And if I like felt like I had to force Max to change the same way I was or vice versa, like that would have really stifled both of us. We wouldn't have been happy. It would have felt like a lot of tension, and then we would have effectively grown apart. Having the space and the flexibility and the breathing room for each of us to change and grow separately really made our relationship stronger.
Wow.
And there were several times throughout our relationship where we were long distance or we were like, kind of at a crossroads of like what was going to happen next for both of us independently in our careers and then what that meant for us together as a couple. And at each of those cross points, it was never like, oh, we have to make this work. Like, I have to make this relationship work. I'm never holding on super, super tightly. I'm kind of like being like, okay, we'll either figure it out and we'll figure out how this works in our life, or if we need to move on from each other, we will. So, like, having that grace for the relationship, if you're all of your happiness, all of your social support, all of your emotional support, all of the things you like to do are exclusively with that person, that's codependency, baby. Like
Ooh!
you will never be happy if that is the only thing that um like you're getting from the relationship.
Pause. I can relate to this with with an ex who I feel like part of me staying in the relationship was just in response to me being like actually very unhappy in my life and very unhappy and unsettled and uncertain with a lot of different domains like career, what I wanted to do, what I was going to do that summer, my classes, all of these things. That seemed kind of trivial, honestly, looking back on it. But when you're in college, like that is your life, such that I even remember thinking like one of the main things that's going for me, if not the main thing going for me, is my relationship. And that relationship didn't work out for the better. You're not satisfied in your life or fulfilled in your life or getting there, pursuit of growth, whatever. Probably you're not going to be in your close relationship. Probably not going to find that person.
So like Max and I have both of us have like really full lives outside of each other. And that's something that I've always felt really strongly about. And then we can share those lives with each other. And I think that's really important. So being your own independent being. Something that I feel like I've really learned from Max specifically is this idea of unconditional love. So like growing up, a lot of the love I felt was very conditional, very transactional, and felt like kind of this tit for tat. And Max has this very like beautiful approach to loving and showing up for people, and it's very unconditionally loving. And I have felt that with this relationship, and that's something that I've really, really learned and valued, and it's totally changed me and totally changed kind of my attachment style for the better, for the healthier. So yeah, like having this kind of unconditional love for a person. I think those are like the three things. So flexibility, independence, unconditional love.
But there's more. She sent another one. She sent another one.
I was thinking last night. I'm going to send this for now, and if I think of them.
Yes. Oh my God. She thought of them. Okay. I really love that because it's not even just in the frame of receiving love, like, oh, you should expect unconditional love, but also giving it. Because when you kind of grow up in a household where you are exposed to conditional love and you feel like you have to do this or you have to be this in order to deserve love, that can make you feel like, well, if I didn't get unconditional love, why should I have to give it? What? Someone can just have that from me and I'm the one to provide that for them? It's almost like it feels wrong almost because it's like you're lowering your expectations for someone, but that's not actually true. You know, being able to love someone unconditionally and give that to them, I feel like should be like a constant to some capacity. Because I feel like if you're only expecting the best out of your partner, such that then you'll love them, then them in their normal state is probably not your vibe, not a match? Question mark?
I feel like the last thing that maybe it goes without saying is really direct communication. And maybe this is not everyone's cup of tea or like how everyone would approach things. So take that with a grain of salt. But as soon as I have any type of feeling, like anything is bothering me, I say it as soon as I think it.
That's
like,
me. Yep.
I really can't like I really have to like work things out.
Mm-hmm.
And
the remix.
I think that's been really useful and helpful in the context of this relationship because I'm not harboring resentment. I'm not letting something build up into this bigger issue. I'm addressing it as soon as I feel some type of way. And Max is the same. As soon as he feels some type of way, he's bringing it up. And I think, and I'm not saying that that's in like an aggressive way and like a way that gets the other person defensive. That's not what I'm saying at all. Bringing up issues and having clear communication that's done with this unconditional love and done with this grace for the other person keeps y'all on the same team.
Mm-hmm.
It's when these issues build up that like all of a sudden the person that you're in a relationship with is your enemy and is on the other side. So yeah, I think that has been really, really helpful. I feel like that's such a like cliche.
No, it's not cliche. Shut up, Margaret. Pause. Okay. Ooh, what was I thinking? Ooh, I had it. One sign that you might not be ready for a relationship, if you're the kind of person who wants to talk things out, who kind of needs to talk things out, who wants to express their feelings, which is something that I do and that I need and that I recognize that I need, a sign that you might not be ready for a relationship yet is if you can't do that for yourself. Like if you inhibit yourself from understanding or having a conversation with yourself to validate your own feelings, your own emotions when something's bothering you. I know people, and this is super common for our like generation of people, depending on, you know, your parents' parenting styles of just like negating and invalidating your own feelings. If you're doing that, if you're having an internal war, accepting your own feelings and being able to reckon with them, then it's probably going to be hard for you to express your feelings when something bothers you or when your partner does something that bothers you. And if it's hard to do that, that might be a recipe for, you know, being taken advantage of in a relationship, not being your full self in a relationship, being a people pleaser in a relationship. Yada da 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 da. Snaps to Margaret. What's the no so true version of snapping? Is it like true? The answer is snapping. It's just snap. You don't have to brand everything. Margaret, thank you very much for your input. And Max, who is her partner, I would just add that one thing that he said is, always having a willingness to stay silent and to actually listen to your partner. A lot of y'all don't know how to do this, even though they're living together, to make time to make the relationship feel intentional and to feel special. So they're going on dates, they're doing romantic things, staying curious and doing what you can to read their mind, which of course comes with time, you know, and is not an expectation, but a perk. And being constantly committed to self-improvement. in a way that coincides with your own personal value system. So if your person combats the direction that you want to go in, might not be good. What else? Openness, relationship. Oh, shout out to Jessie. Jessie has been on her shit, on her grind with these clips, with the social media. Follow No So True Pod or No So True. Shout out to Jessie. Please take a look at her amazing Etsy shop. Buy some earrings, buy some jewelry. Okay, Jessie's our producer, by the way. She's helping me out. And if you want to be a part of the No So True team, or you know someone who's college age, looking for an internship, looking for impact, because it's all about impact nowadays with the resume. It's all about the impact. Hit my line. I'm talking UCLA, USC, NYU, marketing major. Continuing. Challenges with being more vulnerable. I'm someone who is probably more openly vulnerable. And one distinction that we've made between us two that's been very helpful to know, especially when we have conflicts, is that I speak in draft, like the expressing myself, whereas you're someone who thinks deeply about something before saying or doing something. This also goes hand in hand with commitment, where I'll probably more gladly, openly, la-di-da into a decision or into doing something and trying something. But then I might have reservations and anxieties about it throughout. Whereas you're someone who maybe once you make the commitment, you make the commitment. Whether it's a word that you're about to say or like a life decision.
Yeah.
You don't really look back as much.
I feel like I have less regret maybe than you do.
Perhaps. Yes.
But I also take my time sometimes. Oftentimes I take my time. You know, I've been in other relationships, obviously. I think this feels like my first real relationship in a lot of ways. Like my other relationships were like maybe like 6-8 months, like max, or like a lot of situationships kind of vibe where there's like,
you were a catch, we know.
No, that's not what I know. But I think what's really distinguished other relationships from this one is just that level of intimacy, which I think I had just never really had with other partners. Like we might be like obviously physically intimate or spend a lot of time together with like my other partners. But I think there was just like this like really fundamental like thing of we just don't know each other, or maybe I knew them but they just didn't know me.
Yeah. Because you're not the easiest person to understand and know. That was one of my reservations. Yeah, for sure. You're a little bit of a black sheep.
You called me aloof.
Oh, well, I called you aloof because I was so taken aback that you called me aloof.
Sometimes when you're pointing a finger, there's two more pointing back at you.
Yeah, you love saying that shit.
I love
Continue.
that.
Don't let me interrupt you.
Maybe going back to being a kid and, you know, not wanting to, like, be in the center of attention, be in the spotlight. I think that's a very familiar feeling for most of my life. And so I think because of that, I've learned to kind of process my feelings and experiences internally and kind of solo. And I'm very lucky. I have a very supportive family, you know, and a really supportive parents. But even still, I feel like there's I grew up with a gap between us in terms of like what I could share, what we could talk about, what was sayable almost. I grew up in like a very quiet house, I would say, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just really, really, really hard to like put my thoughts out there, my ideas out there. I think I was afraid of committing to something too early. I was afraid of hurting you, which I think was what kind of kept me from starting relationships. Like I really care about this person, but I don't know how I feel. I don't want to start something and then lose that relationship altogether. It's like really scary, I think, for me to put my thoughts and ideas out there because it feels very safe. You know, it might feel very lonely inside my head, but it feels very safe in there. And so I think we've had so many situations where my response when we first started dating to conflict was just kind of like recoil inwards or kind of like shut down, like not talk or just say something's okay, like put up a face and then like leave. You know, I'm very avoidant attachment. Like that's very much my MO.
Yeah, which is so foreign to me. Yeah.
And so I think it's been uncomfortable but good to kind of be pushed out of that by you.
Okay, which is interesting because most of the time I express how I'm feeling more, and Esteban takes a little bit more time doing that, with the exception of jokes. This is something that we ran into with that my friend picked up on, where he be making some dumb jokes. Where one time we were like walking, and this is probably when we were probably six months in, maybe even longer. But we were talking about like, you know, like other guys, and he made a joke like, ooh, like maybe I'll need that for next time. And my friend confronted me about it later and was like, basically was like, is Esteban like committed in this relationship? Because he just like, why did he say that? And I was like, yeah, why did he say that? It wasn't funny, but I think that's an interesting scenario where I'm a little bit more reserved with some jokes in terms of like sexual jokes or innuendos or jokes about like cheating or like not being serious in the relationship. And so that was something that, you know, as time went on and more commitment went on, it was just like, oh, I can recognize it's just a joke. And also he worked on, you know, actually making the joke funny. But yeah, that was pretty funny though, because I was pretty like serious. I was just like, am I stupid?
I mean, just by necessity of any relationship, you need to be very vulnerable and out there and open and share those feelings. And I think you're really good at it. Like, you're a good model for it. I think I'm never going to be like you.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm also going in your direction, too, where I'm not necessarily saying everything that I'm thinking or feeling. Yeah. There is some aspect of it's, you know, it's. I remember my current therapist, and you thought this was amusing, too, where she was like, you can't actually say absolutely everything that you're thinking to just even the closest people to you.
That feels very revolutionary. Like, even I wouldn't have like thought that.
Yeah.
Like, I've always thought in my head like, oh, I'm bad because I'm not sharing my thoughts. Like, I'm like stunted. You know, I'm not emotionally developed. And I think it was nice to hear like, oh, there is some value in like being quiet or like reserved.
Well, there's some like I mean, I think I have evil thoughts. I have like very like I can have the conniving thoughts. I don't think I'm conniving, but like I will sometimes see the worst in people for sure. There's two angles to seeing the best. There's the best in people and the worst in people. And like I sometimes can say things that have taken you aback. Mm-hmm. And I said things that's made you feel like, oh, like Eric is angry, when really it's like I need to talk about it out loud in order to know how I'm feeling. But it's still important to be intentional about what I'm saying, though.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Totally. I think on the flip side of that, like all that's true. I think on the flip side of it, me being more avoidant or reserved or interior, I think there's been a lot of situations where I just kind of retreat, and like that scares you, I think.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, sure.
I remember like we first had started dating, and we had some kind of like ultimately so stupidly small like fight or tussle. Like I think it's a miscommunication probably. And it was really upsetting for me for other reasons. I think maybe like triggering like past experiences or something. Mm-hmm. And I actually needed space. I think I just took like the night space to myself, and like I didn't respond to you the next day.
Oh my God. This was torture.
And I think I didn't know at the time. Like to me, I was like, okay, I'm just like taking a break. I'm gonna like wait like 12, 15 hours. Like I'm gonna go out, do my thing. Like I'll text him tomorrow. In my head, never am I thinking like this is the end. I'm just like, okay, I'm annoyed. I'm stressed. I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, I know that my response is not appropriate to what's happening, so I need to think about why that's happening. I need to think about like what memories is this bringing up. Like why am I feel like I'm in fight or flight? Why do I feel like he's abandoning me? Like all these things. And like meanwhile, like I'm at my house like meditating, journaling, doing all this stuff, and like Eric's like knocking at my door over and over and over.
The morning after. No, what happened was you were at Dia's house, your best friend's house, and then I think it was like I thought you were coming over. We had communicated that you were gonna come over, and then it like got late, and I really took that to heart because it wasn't like the first time something like that happened, and it was kind of like he's not as in it as I am. He's not serious about this, and then it was like you were more aloof via text. My inkling was like, let's just talk about it. And then the morning after, you were, and from my perspective, ignoring me. So I went to your house, knocked on the door to be like, can we just talk about this? Like, I feel like this is kind of like, what the heck? And you had like no idea that I was feeling the way that I was feeling. That was very much like, I feel like quintessential us early on. Yeah. You know?
And I think you were probably under the impression that like we were going to break up maybe.
Very fatalistic. That's another way that I've had to kind of change is like being, just knowing like, even hearing something like conflict is normal in a relationship. Conflict is good in a relationship. There's no such thing as a relationship without conflict.
Totally.
But it's how you deal with it, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But I was very fatalistic in the beginning, where I was like, if it could be one thing where he's not showing up the way that I think that I'm showing up, we're breaking up.
And thankfully you didn't.
Yeah. There's a lot of hullabaloo about communicate. A relationship is all about communication. What do you feel like that means to you? Can we get specific other than just being like, yeah, you need to talk about thoughts?
Like my advice or like my
Yeah,
thoughts?
give some advice for all of the people who are
For all the
desperately
losers who
single.
don't have a relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
I think where I'm most happy with our communication is when we have conflicts, I think. Like when we are like fighting. And I put that
That's when you're happiest?
not when I'm happiest, but I think it's like what I'm most like maybe proud of, or I feel like it's like we're like our strongest in a way. Because I think like we don't really ever fight, I feel like.
Yeah, we've never fought.
Like I'm trying to like maybe sometimes we come close, but even then I don't think we have like we have so many conflicts. I think we're even having like more conflicts the longer we've been dating, probably.
Really interesting.
Maybe, I don't know.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know if that's the truth, but like we've had a lot of conflicts.
We've had where I've literally verbally been like, it's been like a while since we have a conflict, and then the next day we had a conflict. You know which one I'm talking about.
But I think even when emotions are really high or it's like a really like stressful situation, I think we're pretty level-headed. I think we're really good at like sharing our experience of the conflict rather than like pointing fingers and being like, this is how you fucked up.
Yeah.
Sometimes someone did fuck up and we just need to be like, okay, like fine, like I fucked up. Let's accept that.
Yeah.
But I think it's a lot better of like, maybe it's just we're so overcome with like therapy speak.
Yeah, we know therapy speak.
It's very
we know that I feel
it's very much like I feel,
you did that.
Totally. It's
yeah.
like when you did this, I started to feel that way, or like this told me this, or like the story I'm telling myself.
You love that one, and it's effective.
It is effective. It
Yeah.
can be effective because I think so often. Another reason why I don't like to share my thoughts is like sometimes my thoughts are not like logical. I want everything to be logical. I want it to be like this response I'm having is in line with this thing that happened to me.
Yeah.
I think very rarely is that the case with me. Like it'll be a tiny thing and it's like this emotional roller coaster. And so I need like language to account for
Make
that,
it make
basically.
sense.
Yeah, like to be like the story I'm telling myself is like you hate me and you're abandoning me and like I'm never gonna have love again because you like forgot to bring me my sandwich or something like that.
Right.
Like,
Whereas for my version of that is I like to be right, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I am someone who does pride themselves on being right and being the better person, whatever, which is not
which we do like sometimes like get in
functional.
like tussles about that because I think
Oh right, yeah.
we're not gonna go into it, but like I don't necessarily. I mean, of course I like to be right, but I think I don't like to fight, and I feel like you have to like fight to be right. And I think most of the time when we have conflicts, we can kind of accept that most likely there is like some form of both of us being right in almost every conflict.
Yeah, right, yes.
Which I think we're really good at accepting. Like very rarely do our conflicts involve like you did this, like I need you to apologize, or like this is wrong.
Yeah.
Most of the time it's like I did this, well I did this because of this, well I did this because of this. Like okay, let's just accept the situation sucks and like try not to have that happen again.
Lesson learned.
Yeah. It might have been my old roommate, but I think someone's like heard us fighting once like that, and they just kind of like laughed about just, like how like quiet it is. Like it's very like sitting on the couch and like maybe like it's like oh like this is how I feel.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Even when it gets like deep, I think you make it really you are able to sit with my feelings and listen and be quiet, which is the thing that you're good at.
I think I've also, one last thing.
Yes,
I think I've
please.
also gotten better at like just like calling you out on your bullshit.
Yeah,
which maybe
yeah.
I wasn't on earlier.
Yeah.
I think earlier to like the point of like, and you do this to me too, but I think it was easier for you.
Oh yeah, I like doing that.
Yeah,
and
I
you
think for
don't
me it's like
necessarily.
maybe going back to earlier about like one person not being right or the other, like scarcity mindset versus abundance mindset, like different cultures, like all that stuff. I want to respect those like two things can be right at the same time, or like
Yeah.
things like that. And I think I was sometimes clouded by that in the beginning of our relationship, whereas now I'm like, no, that's bullshit. Like, don't like play that
Yeah.
card. Like, you're just I don't buy that.
Do you have example?
I'm trying to think. I never have examples, which is a recurring.
Yeah, this is another blood orange flag.
cut the tape.
Where I'm curious to know what the truthies think. Is it a fair tactic to be like, if you're arguing, to be like, well, give me an example of that? We already know the answer. The answer is yes and no, because you need evidence, but also the feelings behind them, even if you can't necessarily point to evidence, do matter.
Yeah.
So I guess I just gave you the answer.
I'm trying to think.
You're looking skeptical.
No, I'm thinking. I think this is like. I think we don't have to get into the specifics, but I think with our like last, kind of like big thing we had, where we went to an event and we like had to leave.
I dropped the ball a little bit.
Yeah, like maybe. I also responded in certain ways. Whatever. I think that was a situation where I was like, I don't know if I should say something like this isn't like fully my fault. This isn't fully his fault. This isn't fully wrong. But like, okay, like I think I'm gonna say like, not only is this bothering me, I think this is something that I don't want you to do. And I think that was like hard for me in some ways. I think I'm really good at being like, well, this made me sad or this made me feel this way. But I think that was a situation where I was like, okay, yes, like this thing happened.
Right.
Like that's not fully your fault. But also like, I don't want that to keep happening, basically.
Right. And you got my perspective too.
Yeah.
Like
that's what it wasn't like. It wasn't like me trying to give you my thing and like we have to go with that. It was like we both kind of like came with like, well, this is what it is, and it was kind of hard, I think, for a little bit.
It was
like,
hard because that was the most in a conflict in my recent memory where it did feel like what you just said, the former of what you just said, where it felt like I did have to compromise things, or I felt like I'm like you were the right one and I'm giving in, and like how can you not see all the other ways that I show up?
Where I was like, yeah, but like that doesn't change that you did this thing here. Like I don't want to live.
Yeah, exactly.
And it wasn't that bad. We're not gonna say what it was, but it like was not like bad at all.
It really wasn't that bad.
It was just annoying.
But it was a blind spot. In this instance, I was kind of joining him in an event. He has a lot of events, you guys. He likes things. He likes going to art exhibits and art showings and and whatever. So I wanted to go support him. But I also wanted to attend an info session that was online for social work programs because I'm applying to those. And it was just a bad judgment call. Like I either should have committed to one or the other instead of trying to make both happen. I like choked on food there, which is something that I'm doing increasingly more often, is choking on food and not being able to clear it out of my throat. And so I kind of stepped out of the screening, I got some water, and then in that time I also decided to join in on the info session so that I could ask a little question, so that I can make an impression, so that I could just tag on a little bit at the end and make a good, positive. And that is the part of me that is a little bit like scarcity mentality. I could have gone to a different info session. I could have done whatever. But it's like, the stakes are so high. I need to make it happen. I need to make everything happen work. I need to make it work. I can do both. So I kind of just didn't show up in the way that ESTEBAN really wanted me to. And we got in a kind of tussle and in and out, and just kind of like one thing that he observed was sometimes when I go and support him for something that's like that is his thing or his event, it's like I don't necessarily show up in the way that he wants me to. And then I was like, well, how about all these other ways that I do show up and I feel like I have to be whatever? And it culminated in me being like, just give me a fucking break. And I wasn't directing that at him. I was just directing it to the world. Like, I just need to bring, like, I feel like there's all these events that I go to. I feel like I'm such, I really try to do a good job. And it feels like I dropped the ball this once. I like being a good person. I like being the better person. I like knowing and protecting conflicts from happening if it's caused by me. And what I can work on better is, when I do make mistakes, because we be out here making mistakes, y'all, to not just try to like cover my tracks and to take ownership for them. Whew, wow. That was vulnerable, guys. I'm in a vulnerable place right now. Do you think we bounced from that? Do you think we resolved that?
I mean, we're here in the studio, right?
Yeah, I think, okay, yeah.
I think we're good.
Next. I think another great example, in terms of the communicate, and this is what I'm really brewing on. I want to see what you think about this.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, let me make sure Aspiration for perfection is the antithesis of a healthy relationship.
Okay.
Should I shorten that?
Did you come up with this?
Perfection is the enemy of a good relationship. Now, let me tell you why.
Okay.
Because we're talking about communicate, which is so annoying. Like, everyone says communicate, blah, 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 blah. But I feel like something that I had to learn, more than you had to learn, is like, you cannot read my mind. And before, that idea would have been like, well, we're not compatible. Because I feel like I try so hard to read people's minds. And I feel like I generally have a good gauge of what people want and being considerate. And then I have the blind spots. It felt, I'm talking about Europe, you know, where like, you literally actually cannot expect your partner to do something if it was not communicated. You know, like, I think that we know each other pretty well. I'm talking about like dinner, you know? For me, that was a challenge because Chinese tradition and a mix of just my family's tradition. I'm not just going to say all Chinese people do this, but it's kind of like being super, super hospitable when you're both the host and the guest. Like, you're very cutesy is the word that you know.
I love that word.
Would you like to define cutesy for the people who, you know?
Very, I mean, this isn't going to be direct translation, but from what I understand based on what we've talked about, like very like polite and modest and generous in a way and very...
I think modest is... And cutesy, I think, is a terminology, is a term that I think that we can incorporate more in our modern day vernacular. Cutesy is when someone offers you something and you're like, no. Cutesy is when someone says you look good in a photo and you're like, no. Cutesy is forcing other people to let you pay the bill. Or like bending over, the extreme version is like bending over backwards to do something that you don't want to do if it's going to like benefit someone else. And therefore, kind of the pretense, post-tense? That's not a word. The pretense is because it'll help your self-image. Maybe. Just to illustrate how cutesy I've been taught to be and how cutesy my mom is, every single time that we would have a guest come to the house, I'd be like, hi, how are you? And she'd be like, Eric, say hi. And I'm like, hi. And then it makes it all weird. Did anyone else's mom do that? Like, so fucking unnatural. Be for real, Yang Pei. It took a lot out of me to be like, hey, you know, like, I had the conversation with my mom and, like, this is not what I think, this is what she thinks. But, you know, sometimes in different cultures, like, it's kind of standard that the guest would maybe, like, get a gift for the person that they're on vacation, or, like, the host of the vacation, or if you're visiting someone's house. Like, that's something that was, like, super, super, super big in my mom because she's so freaking cutesy. And that was hard for me to communicate to you because it felt unnatural. And it was like the perfect scenario is you doing that without me having to ask. The realistic scenario is, in some ways, we do that for each other. Like, we anticipate what is the right thing to do or like the good thing to do. But that's not a given. And so something that I've really had to shake out of in a lot of ways, and I think this is a perfect example, is being like, I actually can't expect him to do something if he just doesn't know. Because in a lot of ways, you don't know, you know? I had the opposite problem where I will sometimes over-anticipate things that you need or people, like your family. Like, one telling situation was we flipped the script and you're kind of like, I feel like if you were on vacation with my family, like, that is not even something that would cross their minds. You know, I was like, oh, it's not just you're taking and I'm getting, but like a...
It's cultural. Like, it's, I think it's like, I mean, and also, like, it's not like it's this crazy alien concept. Like, I also grew up in a world where, like, you bring flowers, like, the host house. Like, that's not crazy. But even if it were, like, a crazy custom or what, you know, whatever, I think I appreciated that. And I think maybe it can be frustrating, or, like, you feel like, oh, like, my partner should just know these things. Yeah. I think from my perspective, like, that's just not the case, which I think we learned. Like, I'm sure there's probably been situations where, like, I've thought things that like you just didn't know or that felt so like obvious to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would like to think that I think I handled it pretty well.
You did. That's good. I forgot to get to the denouement.
Fuck your family.
Yes, exactly. Because I think that maybe someone else would have said that.
Yeah.
You know, especially going into the cultural elements of it.
And your
but
past
I think
relationships too, what you're talking about.
Yes, exactly. And so, and you like, you know, like we went to a nice dinner and you bought, which was, thank you. You know, and then,
Let the truth know how generous I am.
Right, and then my mom was like blown away.
I know, I guess
was the gag of
points.
it. Yeah, you know, you got them cards, and I feel like that was what's so interesting. She had the expectation, but when you actually met the expectation, it was like you exceeded expectations for her. That's kind of how she is. That's kind of how sometimes.
Which you kind of said, like, I think for this very specific situation, you're like, it doesn't need to be big or expensive or crazy. It just needs to be like a sign, which like makes a lot of sense to me. Like, I don't even think it's like just a strictly Chinese or Asian thing. I'm sure like that's just a hospitality thing that maybe dumb, stupid white Americans don't, you know, fully practice all the time because Americans are rude.
Individualistic collectivism,
of course.
And so I feel like that was kind of a really growing moment for us. I remember one time you said, I can also be a little bit better at anticipating your needs. Like, and that just comes with knowing each other in time.
Yeah.
Like we do know each other a lot more than we did in the beginning. And I think something that has been really surprising about being in a relationship is that things change. Like I really did think towards the beginning, like, oh, if this isn't happening, or if he can't anticipate my needs, or is not able to read me in this way, this is not gonna fly. But some of those things changed. A lot of my insecurities that I had in this relationship were naturally assuaged by being in the relationship and communicating more.
Yes, I love it. I think it's true. People can change. Things can change. Like, I think the mark of maybe a good relationship is that you learn those things. Like, you're not going to know those things off the bat. Like, I think I know so much more about you that I didn't when we first started dating that are just so obvious to me now that I would not do, or like things I would do, or things that I know you need, which just were like off my radar when we first started dating, because I had like such little information about you besides that like image I had of you. It's like a balance of anticipating those needs. Like if we go on vacation again, like I will probably do something similar again. Like, you know, like I will understand that this is like something I need to do because like that happened that one time all those years ago. And I'm sure there's gonna be more things like that where it's like I didn't even think about that, but yeah. I think those moments happen less and less the longer we've been together. Like, even when we have fights now, it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense that you would feel that way because you've told me many times that this thing causes this inside of you.
Yes. Truthies, we just hit 300 Instagram followers. Woo! Yay!
And we have something special for you.
It's an announcement.
A really big announcement.
And the announcement is we have
a contest.
A contest to thank you for all of your efforts and your listenership and commitment to the Truthie community.
The Truthie movement.
Yes. One of you will be chosen for a prize. Yay! And that prize is either $30 USD or a No So True t-shirt. Woo!
Yay! Which one do you think you'd get?
$30. So all you gotta do is comment both on this episode and on one of the Instagram posts. It can be anything. You can get creative. In fact, the more creative, the better. And you will be entered in for a raffle. And you will be contacted live a la radio show to get your prize. So if you want a shirt or $30 and a featurette on the next No So True episode, you're going to want to comment right now. You have until
tonight at midnight.
Enjoy the remainder of the episode. Which of these do you want to talk about?
Why don't we talk about boundaries?
Okay.
And cheating. And flirting.
You want to start off?
No, you go ahead.
It was almost shocking to me how much my response to having been cheated on still bled into this relationship, because this wasn't the relationship right after that. It was the one after that, you know? And it's like, I can go down a whole spiral of like why that's so shitty and like, damn, like I wish that this didn't happen. But no, like I think embracing some of the trust issues that I've had and having those protective barriers or mechanisms in place, you know, were important for me. But I do think as time went on, led to a little bit of conflict between us two, and also have been broken down a little bit because you've been trustworthy. Like there's never been an instance where I've questioned if I can trust you or trust that you're, you know, not going to cheat on me.
I appreciate it.
I do feel like I know you, because I think that's one part of cheating that's really not off-putting, but very jarring, is that it's like someone does something that you couldn't have predicted, and it's at your expense. And it's almost like, yes, there's all that betrayal, but it's also like, I don't know you. Like there's a part of you that I don't know. And so I don't think that applies here.
You know me so well.
There's still so much to learn.
There's still so much to learn, but hopefully none of those things involve cheating.
This was a long time ago. And so I would probably say that I'm healed. But every wound has a scar. Kind of like what I was telling Esteban before about just like cheating just makes you it's very jarring, because it's like there's a part of someone that you don't know. It also just fucks with your perception of reality. I think that it did not necessarily cause anxiety for me, but because I can be a pretty anxious person and I am medicated for anxiety, it can validate anxiety. Because anxiety, for me, how it manifests is having thoughts and expectations and worry over things that either haven't happened or likely will not happen. But then when something like cheating happens, where there's been an instance or more where what you thought would never happen happened, when there's a breach of trust such that something you think is so true as the person who you love betrays you, when something like that feels like is so solid and such a given gets ruptured, that makes you wonder, what else are you wrong about? What else could potentially be happening, whether it's in a relationship or just like random accidents or things that could happen to you. It makes you start to think, oh, I didn't think that my friend could hate me, but I've been wrong before. I didn't think that tree was going to fall on my house, but I've been wrong about things that I've been pretty sure about before. And so I think that's probably one of the most lingering, painful parts of cheating, is just that, especially when you're young, when it kind of crumbles your understanding of what is worth being prepared for versus what is crazy to think. That's where it can get a little bit hard. But that's where some of the building blocks come back in, of rebuilding trust and understanding that, you know, one person's actions does not necessarily affect the next partner, especially if you're able to communicate that to them. So thanks, Esteban. You've been very understanding and patient with me. Yes. Another side effect is that it makes you someone who depends on reassurance, which might just be anxiety in general, but cheating plus anxiety equals desperate, constant need to be validated, to be told that you're not going to be cheated on, that your trust is not going to be broken. And that actually kind of doesn't help either. I kind of feel like the best thing that you can do is just kind of show your cards and to share your feelings and your wounds with your partner if you have been cheated on. Or maybe if you've been a cheater, I don't know, I've never been a cheater. If you've been cheated on, and to just kind of make that clear and yeah, hope for the best, but also just set clear expectations and understanding and knowing yourself more, that if something like that were to happen again, you know what to do. Currently, with how things stand, how I've talked about it with ESTEBAN is, if he were to cheat on me, I would very seriously consider just breaking it off, because that's something that is a boundary, and it's just something that I don't want to have to. Oh, because that's another detail, is that I stayed with someone who cheated on me. It's a lot more complicated than just like, oh, they cheated behind my back and didn't know. There were other things involved and other things that he was dealing with, and so I give grace to that. But it's a painful, confusing process to stay with someone who's cheated on you. And I am a believer that it can make your relationship stronger. But I think that for me, it would just be uncomfortable and hard to continue to do that again, to be with someone again and kind of have that voice in the back of my mind, like, oh, it could happen again. It could happen again. It happened before, it could happen again. That's kind of where I stand right now. But, maybe things change. Maybe that's a sign that I'm not fully healed. Maybe I never will be.
I think it's interesting because I think you and I each have a different relationship to the idea of cheating and like fidelity, in the sense that I don't think I've been cheated on. I haven't I haven't really been in a monogamous relationship where I think that has happened. I could be wrong. You never know. But everything else I've been in has been like situationships or like more casual things. Mm-hmm. I think because of that, I think the second thing is just coming of age in like a gay world, in my gay world. I think I was just taught very early on to like be skeptical of monogamy, to be like skeptical of the idea of finding love. Like when I was a kid, I was like convinced I was never going to have a boyfriend or a partner or like a long-term relationship. Because I think men are shit. Like I just kind of think that's like the rules I was taught. Like you have to accept that all your friends are going to be fucking each other. And if you're ex, you dump your boyfriend, like your closest friends are probably going to hook up with him after that. Like that's just kind of the world I grew up in.
Is that also partially because of your mom being queer, or that's more so just what you saw, in college and high school?
I think it's honestly more college and high school. I think my mom is like queer, but she's also like monogamous for the most part, I think. I don't know. So I think because of that, and also like my mom just like being a therapist, like I just saw how much people cheat all the time. So like
and that's such an interesting perspective.
I think just like growing up in a world where I know everyone cheats, and especially gay people like are not monogamous, I was like, okay, that's never going to happen for me. And so I think because of that, I think I just naturally had a little bit of a different, like I was less worried about cheating, I think, than you were when we first started dating. Yeah. And I think even now, like I'm less like concerned with it. It's also because there's a big amount of trust between us, and not to say I wouldn't be upset if you cheated on me. Well, I would be.
What would you say? What have you often said to me? Or like,
I think I would like laugh almost. Like I'd be very confused. I'd be like, wait, what? Like that's so stupid. Like why would you do that? Like I would think a lot of things. I'd probably ultimately feel upset and betrayed too. But I think it feels like a lot less weighty than it did for you when we first started dating. And I think there was a lot of run-ins, especially before we were monogamous and committed to each other, where it was like, what is this? What does this mean? Like some like element of like wanting to build that trust. Mm-hmm. And I think it took me a while to realize that you were coming from that position of like being cheated on, which is, I'm sure, really difficult and hard. I don't want to say traumatic, but like maybe traumatic. I don't know.
It definitely left a big imprint on me. I mean, I was young.
It was your first relationship. So I feel like that's hard when your first relationship to get cheated on.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I feel like it shaped a lot, I think, of our like dynamics, and also the way we interacted with other people, the way that we saw sex, and the way that, for a while we just saw like, interacting with people that are not our partners. Like, I think for you had like a much lower threshold for something to become like inappropriate.
Yes, totally.
And that definitely caused some issues in the beginning of our relationship.
Yeah. And that actually opens up to a lot of things. Like another way that we discovered that we're different is like my more fixed mentality in terms of morals, and you were perhaps more flexible.
Yeah.
You know, understanding of morals, and we can sum it up. But like, there's so much that I feel like that you activator. I don't know why I'm laughing at the idea that you would emotionally cheat on me. Sorry. I don't really know what you would need.
My baby's so perfect.
And
So my man gives me everything I
I would
need.
emotionally cheat on you. I'm nearly positive.
I do think for me, with that whole thing of like more rigid or like more flexible morals, I definitely learned a lot about myself by dating you, I think, in some ways. Because to me, like, I think the way I see the world just feels so natural, just as I'm assuming the way you see your world feels natural to you as well. And so I think it was like really different to be in a relationship with someone that has the like morals and boundaries that you do, which are not, I think it's kind of a neutral thing. It's not good or bad that you feel that way. I think same with me, but it's just so different than the way I was raised and the way I see the world. And so I think because of that, sometimes when I was made aware of that difference, it was quick for me to think I was just like a shitty person. Like I felt like, okay, like I don't have morals. I don't have those things. Like those things don't feel as important to me that as you do. Like you had very clear, like this is right, this is wrong, this is right, this is wrong. I think those have changed, but I think at the beginning that was difficult for me. And that definitely got us into some issues and things like, I don't know if I necessarily like stand on or I'm like still like saying that was like the right thing that I did. But like, for example, like when I'm worried I'm gonna sound like the villain when I say this, like the truthies are gonna be like, hey. But I feel like when we had first started dating, I think we were monogamous committed. I don't know if we were yet. I don't think we were.
We were always de facto monogamous. We have not hooked. I mean,
we haven't.
hooked up
Yeah.
with anyone since starting to date.
That's true.
But
like
it
we
was
weren't
not-
like we're boyfriends. We're like the thing.
That came around like June, I would say.
Yeah.
After I interrogated you for knowing that you had a Hinge on your phone too, and well, curiosity.
But I think what had happened was you had somehow seen messages that I had sent to someone that I used to talk to.
Oh, now I'm gonna look like the bad guy.
We're both. I'm not gonna.
I snooped.
He snooped.
I think this is I think that detail is important.
Yeah, okay, well, I wasn't gonna out you, but feel out
cheating
yourself.
Has followed me.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect example. Like you basically went through my phone. Not like you were like literally I'm gonna plan it, but I think you were on my phone, like you had the opportunity. And so you read a text message that I had sent to a guy I used to see.
Yeah.
Again, in that kind of situation, like what is this zone? I'm very much like moved on from him I was at the time, but we're friends. Like I think I'm friends with a lot of my exes, which I think is also that cheating and the kind of like flexibility. Like not cheating, but I think in the gay world, there's a lot more flexibility with like your exes and things like that. Like I'm
Which I also partake.
You are like you're also friends with your some of your exes, and that's great. But I think I had said something to the effect of like I had called him, I think like handsome. I think something like that.
Yeah.
Which I think like obviously like I'm not stupid. Like I know how that sounds. Like it sounds like I'm fucking flirting with my ex.
Yeah, and it's also just not something that you say. You like.
I think it's.
I'm saying I don't really hear you say that.
Well, I call you handsome.
Exactly.
That was part of it. Yeah.
Just became part of it.
But I think I'm very like situational in like how I refer to people. Like, and I think maybe sometimes you think I'm just wishy-washy, or you thought I was wishy-washy, but I think it can be a little bit like chameleonic sometimes. I'm just like I like match the. Yeah, I mean that's it. I mean I'll take it. But yeah, I think because of that, like that was just the way we talked to each other. Like so I just called him handsome. It wasn't flirtatious. It was how's work going or something like that, or like it was something like that. I don't stand by that being like an okay thing to do.
Yeah.
But that's what happened, and I think it like triggered a lot for you. That was like, do you still have feelings? Like you confronted me on a date. We were on the like, we were on this.
So funny.
It was so funny, and like now I know. Like now I could have seen that coming from a mile away because we were on like the swan boats in Echo Park Lake and at night and like you were just like really like kind of quiet and like distant, and now like instantly I know to read that as like you're upset or thinking about something. Like now I'm instantly okay, like what's wrong? And I didn't really understand that, and then you hit me with that. And I think at first I was obviously like, why are you snooping through my phone? Like that became a thing.
Well, your reaction to it was very important because it was wrong that I did that.
Yeah.
And I knew that it was wrong. And I felt guilty even before I had told you. But knowing your reaction to it and knowing that it was like, I knew that it was going to be a breach of trust, but I still think that getting your perspective on it. Basically, this just catalyzed us to have the conversation, and you had to learn more about my history. You had to know more about me and more of the things that I maybe wasn't necessarily so open about sharing before. But that was very important for me to like commit to not doing that again.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's an example of like what we were talking about earlier, and that we're still trying to figure out is what to do with our feelings when they're kind of feeling compatible or something. Like it's like not clean. I feel like I always thought of relationships as like someone's right and someone's wrong. I think just seeing a lot of relationships and maybe like my parents in which I felt one person was right the entire time, which I now know is also not the case. But I think we've been in some situations where like there is no full right or wrong. Like, okay, what I said wasn't great, but also you shouldn't have read it. 100%. And so I think that was like a situation where we had to just like deal with that and like figure out. I think we did it pretty well. And like we kind of set a path that we've been following since of like, there's all this like mess, like how do we clean it up?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that also coming to terms, like in terms of the having more rigid moral compass versus more flexible moral compass, you know, a lot of that comes, as we know, from how I was raised. Very should do this, should do that. Very based on like image and these, I don't know what word to use besides fixed, but like in Chinese culture, it's like more traditional, perhaps you could argue. In some ways not traditional, but definitely in kind of like sex. Like I think like being Chinese versus being gay is like total polar opposites in terms of relationship with and comfortability with sex. So like sex is not something that we talked about. It's not something that we joked about. Sex is not something that you enjoy. Like at least like it's that you know.
I'm not allowed
that,
to.
but that was definitely something where like I mean we talked about previous instances and stories where we kind of brought up our differences, but like for me it's just it became the case that later on it was like anything sexual related is like bad, you know, especially if it's against the partner, like da-da-da-da-da. And so realizing that there's actually benefits to opening up my own moral compass, and there are benefits for you to like kind of stand behind what you think is right, maybe, helped. I mean, there was another instance. I don't think we need to bring that up. But how do we...
I did not cheat for the viewer.
Basically,
you don't need to talk about it.
It was an advancement. Like, you found... there was an opportunity presented to you in a way that I felt was like sketch. In a way that I felt was not... was making my little sound alarms go off. My moral compass go off and be like, that's not the right way to do it. That's not the fair way to do it. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Are you talking about?
Yeah,
we can bleep it out, but I was trying to figure out who we were talking about.
I mean, do we feel like that's enough information to share?
I mean, I feel like this is just a very unique situation. I'm trying to think how to talk about it without it being like identifying in any way.
Well, we'll take out the name.
Yeah, obviously the name, but essentially it was a very unique situation.
Yes, very unique situation.
Where, again, in keeping spirit of like keeping in contact with my exes, very far from an ex. I don't think that's a very like.
But again, because of the gay world, is like you have ghosts.
You have ghosts. That's a better word. My ghost. Yes. Mine's haunted. I hooked up once with this person, and then we stayed in contact after that. And as part of this contact, this person who works in a line of work that I'm also interested in, an unnamed line of work.
Because the gay world is also so small.
The gay world is also so small. Basically offered me a paid position to work with him in this line of work that I'm interested in getting involved in. And I think it was like very complicated for Eric's and my relationship because... And I knew it wasn't like I was like oblivious. I was like, okay, I knew it was like what does it mean to be employed by essentially your ex, who also like did some like not great things. Like that's also part of it. It's not just like a neutral person.
Made some discomfort.
And so I think that was tricky in many ways. Like, it was an issue that lasted, I think, several months while I ended up not working for him, just to cut to the chase. But when the initial outset happened, I feel like you had the very expected feelings of like, will this person pull anything on you? Like, I think maybe a smaller amount of you was like, do I, ESTEBAN, feel any kind of way. I feel like you didn't really feel that super much. I could be wrong.
At first, it was like, what does this mean for this relationship?
Yeah.
You know, like, what I don't want to be disrespected. I don't want boundaries to be crossed. But then where things got interesting was that months later, it became like, what do I think about my partner doing something like this? Like taking up an opportunity that one could argue was like an easy way out, or like not as fair, or like not merit, whatever. Those ways that I was taught, you know, you must abide by. Growing up,
because I think that's also a perfect example of like maybe our differences of like culture or beliefs or like morals, because I think regardless of the like sexual fidelity of it or the like inappropriateness of it, I think what you're talking about, what came up later, was regardless of this being your ex, like how you basically confronted me, like how do you feel about taking an opportunity that's essentially taking advantage of someone. I think that was also an interesting moment, because I was like, I don't have a problem taking advantage. I need to look out for me. Like, I don't have these connections. Like, it's the dog eat dog world.
Yes.
I'm fine with that. And I think that for you was like, okay, well, I'm not okay with that. And that was this weird catch-22 situation.
I was able to realize there are ways that I can be more flexible in this thinking. There are ways that I stand in my own way. There are opportunities or ways that I feel like, you know, maybe there are things that I could be accessing more of or doing myself more of a service if I just cared a little bit less or didn't put as much of an emphasis on this is how it should be. This is the honorable way to do things. And like, I feel like this was another opportunity for us to get a little bit more balanced, and for me to change in ways that I want to change as an individual.
Yeah, I mean, same here. Like, I obviously want morals of some form, and I want to be a good person, whatever that means. Like, that's obviously important to me. I think I was just raised with a little bit more flexibility. Probably like it's a little bit of like the American way inside of me. Also just like my family just being like hustlers, like to some degree, like all of them kind of are, especially my mom, you know, just had to fight for everything and take what was there. And I think what I think was helpful there is like you had asked when we were having that kind of discussion was you're like, well, how would you feel if I did this? And I was like, frankly, I would want you to do this. Like if you're in this position, I'd be upset if you didn't do this. Because if this opportunity was given to you to further your career and you didn't take it because of moral reasons, there's many moral reasons which you should not take, but this one is like, I think that this is one you should do.
Yes, because that was also an eye-opening moment for me. It was like when you said, well, there was a scenario where you would have been supportive, or you actually would have been like, okay, cool, like, bet, like, who cares about this? Like, go get your bag, whatever. And I was like, yeah, there actually is another way that I could kind of be thinking about it. Why do you feel like it's so hard for people nowadays, and specifically the gays, to find intimate relationships? And can you relate? Could you relate?
Definitely. I didn't really think I was going to be in a relationship at this point in my life.
I know.
Probably.
I know.
I'm happy I am, but even when you like first asked me out, I didn't think you were going to ask me out on a date. I thought you were going to ask me to like hang out again, which like what all gays want to do is like hang out and like watch a movie or something like that. I think, at least for me, I can't speak for everyone. I think for me, it was just, there's like, you can probably help me out with some like economics term here, but it's just like having too many choices. Like
choice paradox.
Choice paradox. There's
the paradox of choice.
Paradox of choice. I like there was just so many choices, especially living in a major city like Los Angeles. Privilege for sure. I definitely know what it's like to not live there, coming from Colorado, where it's a lot of creepy old white men. So I'm very thankful it's here in LA. Honestly, a big reason why I came to LA was to have a bigger choice of romantic partners, because like, I just wanted that at this point in my life. But I think it was just like, I liked the chase of it. You know, I liked going out with people, like talking to people, like seeing what people's quirks were, and like, you know, having physical experiences with partners. Like I liked all those kinds of
physical experiences. Does that just mean sex, Esteban? Be for real.
Things. Even though it wasn't really like bringing me like joy or satisfaction or fulfilling me, I liked like the chase of it.
Yeah.
And I kind of always thought there might be something like better out there. I'm gonna wait for that better thing, whether it's like, you know, a nicer person, someone that's funnier, someone that has like more money, someone that's cooler, someone that's like better at sex, like any of those things. It's hard, I think, when you're first dating, not to feel like you're losing or giving some of that up. And I think that's kind of why it took us a while to really fully commit to each other, even though really neither of us did anything, I think, after we first started like seeing each other.
Yeah.
Because it was like, okay, well, I just don't want to close the door on that world.
Yeah.
Unless you're in like a bad relationship, like something that's like not like actually not working out for you, or it's like obviously so many ways relationships can go wrong. I feel like oftentimes there's not things that are better out there for you. Unless it's like, of course, there's so many ways relationships can be really, really bad. You should leave, obviously. But like, if you're somewhat content or like you're curious, like, I feel like it's worth leaning into the relationship more and seeing ways you can like spice things up or change things or like introduce new dynamics. Like, I think just being gay and just like the surplus of sexual experiences, romantic experiences that are out there, it's like sometimes easy to fall into the trap, like, is this the best relationship?
Yeah.
Should I leave? Should I go do something else? Should I find someone else that's gonna satisfy this thing that I feel like I'm not getting right now? Whereas I feel like more often times than not in this relationship that was at one point just like pretty good, like by leaning in more, we were able to take a really good relationship.
For them gays, I don't know. I thought this was kind of juicy that Esteban spilled this tea, and I like it because I feel like what the gays did is we have such high standards for ourselves. Why? Because we've had to, I was gonna say fight. Fight is dramatic. Some of us have had to fight. We've had to compensate. We've had to be excellent. We've had to excel, which is the exact same thing as saying be excellent, but the verb itself. We've had to excel to prove people wrong. And so we have very high standards for ourselves, very high expectations. And that can bleed into a little bit of trouble when it comes into our relationship lives. We just have very high expectations for the dating pool. This causes two problems, okay? One, this prevents people from dating, which makes them good at dating. So a lot of the gays don't know how to fucking date. And two, there's a vulnerability problem for the gays, for the cis gays, because a lot of gays don't actually really open up about who they are, what they're experiencing. It's a lot of vapid, talking in circles, talking about the culture, talking about things instead of like really listening and knowing what's happening on an emotional level. Looking back at some of the dates or interactions I've had, it's not like they're all like fine.
Yeah.
And you kind of can't really know unless you have that level of like commitment in some ways.
Totally. Like, yeah, I think if we were to break up or if we were to like somehow start dating again for whatever reason, I think I'd be a lot more like discerning as a dater now, or that I know what to look for. I would be like very picky in a way that I wasn't. I mean, I was still pretty picky before. Like I wasn't just like going out with anybody, but I feel like I would be like constantly comparing it to this thing that I have or had with you.
Sometimes I have this story in my head that like, oh, I was less desirable than you, which I think in a lot of ways is fair because
I mean, you've talked about it. You've spoken your truth on this podcast.
That's true.
So.
And you and I have talked before, and we've bonded before about like, you know, being a person of color in the gay dating world and how it's kind of both, it's kind of paradoxical, using that word again, of how we've been like both rejected or fetishized for our race or ethnicity, but also sometimes feeling like we've been people have been more drawn to us, mostly white people, but also people in general were more drawn to us because there are some features that we have that are maybe not quintessentially our ethnicity, i.e. we have some more like whiter features or like big eyes, whatever, like, well, you know. I think that having that common experience has been nice for us to just talk about and nice for us to not feel insecure about in this relationship, I think.
I think it's true. Like, I think that's one of the things I really liked about getting to know you more and like as we first started dating was talking about our past experiences. You're like, I've been obviously in relationships, or not relationships, I've been in situationships again and again with like other people of color, but I've only been in like actual hardcore labeled relationships with white men before I dated you.
I would say the same thing.
I think. Yeah, I think so. And I think that was like a really big draw to me, was like being with someone that like really understood what that experience was like. And I think with you and me in particular, it's like the very hyper specifics of our dating past, like what you said of like many situations where I've also felt very undesirable because of I assume my race and ethnicity. Maybe it's other things. Maybe I'm just ugly. I don't know.
You're
but
not,
thank you.
not.
You have to
People
say that.
People always comment about how good looking you are to me.
No. But I think
okay.
so. I'm familiar with that feeling.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's a lot of ways in which the way that I look, the person that I am, has made it easier for me to find like white gay male attention. Whether it's like I'm, a lighter skinned person. I'm read as white in many capacities. I'm highly educated. Like I can keep up a conversation with like a 40-year-old white man, which I never want to do again, but I can, and I think it's like similar for you. And so I think it's like kind of that balance, like being like very highly desired, because like we're that very diluted, like exotic object. Like I'm so read as Latino. Like I've never felt more Latino than being with white men. Yeah. Which is like not a fun experience. Like it's like constantly reminded like, oh, like Papi and like, like all this shit and like Esteban. And, like,
I'm sorry. I also just think that's like crazy.
It's also crazy because I'm not Papi. Like look at me. Like I'm like baby, first of all. But I think it was also interesting when we first started dating too, just to talk about the nuances of our different identities, just because I think race plays a very different role given our differences. Like I think for me, because I'm Latino, men like want this like hypersexual, like masculine person. Like they want like uncut dick. They want like it's true. Like that's happened to me so many times. I'm not. I'm cut, guys. Just so you know. Sorry to out myself.
We got that foreskin that get me down on the foreskin.
I think there's that. Whereas for you, it's like they want someone that's like very submissive, someone that's very
But more so the rejection.
You get a lot more
my
rejection.
But also I do feel like I can also balance that with being like, but you know what? I also wasn't out here wanting to fuck any ugly guys. Like, not that you were.
I don't know how to talk about that.
But yeah, I was perhaps pickier in some ways, but also like the numbers were just not there. I was not getting dates.
It's like the election night. The numbers are just not there.
The numbers aren't adding up.
I mean, I think like to circle back to your other podcast episode, I think it's just the difference in like the gay male community. Like I think there's at least a very complicated desire, but there's a desire for like Latin men and Black men in a way that I think Asian men just haven't had that. Moment's not the right word, but they just like play a different role in like the stereotypical like fantasy.
Trend is a word.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all disgusting. I'm not like ascribed to that, but like I'd be dumb if I didn't acknowledge that like just Latin and Black men, and even those two groups are different too, but occupy a different space than Asian men. Yeah. In the gay male dating worlds.
Oh my god. Y'all, not me. Side note, it's basically confirmed that I have acid reflux, which is so embarrassing when you're 26 years old. I remember in my first relationship, I was so insecure about the fact that I had way less experience than the person that I was with. My perspective on this now is like, okay, yes, and honestly, and this might be, again, a little bit too TMI, a little bit more too much in the sexual space, but I think it extends to many things. Just because you haven't explicitly done it doesn't mean that you're not good at it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I believe that some of my friends who have never been in a relationship, if and when they choose to be in a relationship, it will be a fantastic relationship. They've done the studying, they've been curious, they've looked internally. Like, just because who cares? I mean, I can speak from me and Esteban's experience. He's had probably more like, I think like dating wise partners, but it kind of didn't matter because those apples weren't Honeycrisp. They were Macintosh and Granny Smith. Side note, except for that, I actually love Granny Smith. Underrated. You know what I mean? I'll also just say that being in my relationship with Esteban for like a while now has just by nature like, made me have to think less about like my insecurities as being an Asian in the gay community. And I just, part of it is being in a very loving and understanding and good relationship. And the other part of it is that I'm just not exposing myself to the racism of the gay community. I'm not on Grindr. I haven't been on Grindr for the past nearly 2 years. And if we were single, I don't think I would want to be again. Like, a part of me used to be like, well, I'm not weak. Like, I can take this. Yeah, like racism and BS and rejection is going to be out there, but I can subject myself to that. I'm tough. There is something to be said about if something makes you feel bad, it's actually okay to like not partake in it and to not do it. What do you want? What do you want?
In this relationship?
Yeah.
I want someone that, not someone, I want to be in a relationship where we're able to like be stable and solid for the other person, but also flexible enough to like move as that person grows and changes. You know, I want to always have that like secure ground to stand on, but also like a willingness to explore and like grow together and see how like life makes our lives different.
I think I want similar thing. I definitely would love to be in a relationship where I can grow, and my growth, like it would be so perfect and so great if the growth of the relationship corresponds with my personal growth. And I want to be with someone who understands or strives to understand me and can help unlock a lot of possibility and joy and connection and love.
Wow.
Yeah, I think so.
Do you think we do those things already for each other?
Yeah, I think so. I think if I really ask myself, you know, like, why am I in this relationship, or is this relationship what I want? Like, I feel good about it. I feel pretty good about it.
Great. And that's on period.
That's on period. Any last words, babe?
I love you.
I love you too. For the most part, I feel quite stable in this relationship because the baseline, there's such a heavy foundation and baseline that's there and growing, i.e. we want similar things. Or if we're unsure about the things that we want, the other person is also unsure about that. For kids, for example, we both think that we want kids, but we're not too sure. Where I would maybe draw the line a little bit is if like it was so obvious that one of us wanted kids and the other didn't. And it's kind of like, okay, well, we're just going to keep butting heads, or one of us is going to compromise on something that we don't really want to compromise on. That's where I just feel like a relationship might just be too hard. But I think ultimately something I really value is that we're kind of similar. At the end of the day, we make people feel a similar way, I think. And this has been called out by some of my friends even early on. Hey, shout out Kiki. Like, I remember she texted me, she was like, I like ESTEBAN. He makes me feel like a kind of like a giggly, like warm, that the same way that you do. And I was like, that's really important to me because that's something that I care about giving to other people. And that's something that I really like that he does too. Like, even though we talked a lot about our differences, at the end of the day, like, I think our friends do look at us and they're kind of like, y'all are a similar vibe though. Like, and I think that that's worked for us so far. And at risk of being gay couple twins, like a twin couple, even though we are starting to look more like each other, like we're both like cute boys with nice smiles, you know, like the things that you can't change and that you wouldn't want to change in yourself and you at the end of the day wouldn't want to change in a partner. I think those things, there has to be compatibility there and some level of similarity there, I think. Because we've all sat at the dinner party with a couple who were just kind of like, y'all seem like y'all are in different worlds and y'all are trying really hard and that effort matters so much, but that effort is not going to get you. This person just like maybe isn't your person. I've felt that feeling, being on the other side of it and being like, oh my God, like, I don't love that this person is a representation to these people of me, you know? And I was talking about that with my roommates, just like, is this a person who I see, who I want to be a representation of me? Like, that's also a good way to know whether or not this relationship or this relationship that you are potentially pursuing is right for you. So, you know, who knows? Maybe one day there will be a follow-up episode called the breakup episode, or when you think you finally had it and no, you didn't. But, you know, I hope that this, whether you're in a relationship or not, I hope that it hit. This isn't a podcast just for mindless indoctrination or humor or this is not that. This is deeper. This is special. Let's see if we can get to 1,000 streams by the end of the year. We have a lot of things planned. Give me your thoughts. What do y'all want to see? What topics do y'all want? Because we are growing. We are truthing so hard, y'all. And thank you. I feel so good. I love doing this. It is so fun and feels like a lot of parts of me, a lot of the things that I've done have coalesced to this specific project and thing. And I just hope that we continue. And so, thank you.